I think that Elisio, we were going to move straight to you now, but Elisio.
I can say something now.
Okay, so
Right, sorry.
we're moving straight to Elisio before he leaves. Yeah, thank you, Elisio. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about this. Something just came in between. I'm supposed to be talking about the SDGs for Africa, if they are an extension of the Colonial project or a meaningful blueprint. Well, was there ever a colonial project is the question I would ask. Can we describe European colonization of African countries as a colonial project? I doubt it. It just happened. Colonialism just happened, but like the French literary critic Todorov once argued, it is important in approaching colonialism to make a distinction between causes and reasons. What caused colonialism to happen is radically different from the reasons Europeans offered in defense of what they did. So world expansion and the need for resources to fuel consumption and industrialization do not by themselves necessarily lead to colonialism. But owing to many factors, chief among which was their technological superiority, Europeans came to take control of Africa. And it was mainly in the wake of this that they increasingly felt the need to explain it to themselves, including in particular the extent to which they had violated their own moral values in pursuit of empire. So in this sense, the causes of colonialism are less relevant than the reasons Europeans gave for it. And these reasons amount to a rationalization. It is also these reasons that give us the impression of a colonial project with such key elements as adding value to the continent's wealth, leading Africans into progress, and laying the foundations for a universally shared notion of the human condition. Now, if you are able to fool yourself into believing in your own lies, you do stand a chance of lending coherence to what you do. But this is hindsight bias. There's something colonialism did, and which is important to take into account. Colonialism created a European world and placed before everyone else the burden of finding their way in that world. In other words, when Africans fought for independence, they were not fighting for the right to live in a world of their own making. They were fighting for the right to have a go at managing in a European world. Even the terms under which they were able to articulate their longing for freedom, that was European. Self-determination as the right to create nation states governed by established European ideas, including the proper ways of managing economic problems. So I'm not looking for an idyllic African world, for even the very idea of Africa, to the extent that it is only intelligible as the expression of nationhood and culture within this world, is a European one. So the colonial project starts actually with development aid. Development aid has been the relentless commitment to binding Africa to a European world. And the rationale behind development is to protect the world Europeans built. This does not mean that Europeans are hostile to Africa's development. Quite the contrary. They would be happy if Africa could develop and its pressing problems could be solved. All they wish for is that Africa's development contributes to upholding this world. And this is the real colonial project, and development aid is its main tool. But development aid is one big misunderstanding. It is the idea that development aid is about developing countries. It's not. It's about developed countries and their need to protect their own world. And this is couched in normative language with three main features. First, it has fostered unreasonable expectations based on the highly problematic idea that doing the right thing is all that one needs to achieve desired outcomes. Unfortunately, the world is not fair. It does not necessarily reward good behavior. doing the right thing in itself is not enough to be successful. Secondly, and more disquieting, I would say, the thinking underlying development assistance and policy draws from a contentious assumption consisting in the belief that one knows how developed countries actually developed. This often translates into a series of recipes seriously at odds with empirical evidence. Some people speak of strong institutions, good governance, absence of corruption, commitment to democracy and human rights, etc., basically assuming that this is what it takes to develop a country. Well, empirical evidence tells a different story. In Europe, for example, strong institutions, effective anti-corruption strategies, and generally good governance were the outcome of development, not its cause. Thirdly, development thinking persistently makes the serious mistake of ignoring the open-ended nature of historical events. Every situation is not the end of the world, but the announcement of new opportunities for action. We have not yet discovered the algorithm that could enable us to direct human creativity and energy into those actions consistent with how we think is the right course of history. And this is of direct relevance to development policy, for most ills blamed for preventing development in Africa, for instance, are in fact African responses to the opportunities opened up by development intervention. So both success and failure of development interventions create new situations, and with them, new opportunities for human action, for good or for worse. You need authoritarian political orders to engineer development. So this is what makes, in my view, the SDGs a colonial project. First, they commit us to dealing with ends, not with means. Why can't migration, for example, be a solution? Why is migration fault? I recently asked a Swiss journalist why it is Switzerland's business to fight the causes of migration in Africa. How did Europe develop? Rather than defining ends, we need a discussion about the means. And there have been times when such a discussion took place. Does anyone remember, for example, the debate on a new international economic order? Does anyone remember the debate on the need to reform capitalism? Secondly, what produces institutions that fight poverty are values. For example, the importance that human dignity, justice, as equity, equal opportunities have for the way we choose to manage social coexistence. And fighting poverty in these circumstances is much more than just getting people out of poverty, than doing those microcredit schemes that are always legitimized by the existence of drunken husbands who live off the work of their diligent wives. Fighting poverty in such circumstances is strengthening values, that is promoting the kind of principles that will increase our rejection of the violation of human dignity and will protect us from those who are prepared to accept it as the price that must be paid to ensure the welfare of the few. And okay, so why do we think poverty is the problem? Why has it never crossed our minds that wealth might be our problem? These are rhetorical questions, of course, but justified. Poverty is the problem, not because it is really a problem, but because the way we approach the world from an economic point of view makes it the problem that needs to be tackled. In other words, our model for managing our economic assets is geared towards producing wealth. So it commits us to a vision of the world based on the idea that the pursuit of wealth is at the same time the sine qua non for the elimination of poverty. And this is difficult to understand because a significant part of that poverty that we want to fight is produced by the process of wealth production. So I think we should deal with those issues as well. The reason why wealth is not the problem is also simple. if we were to define wealth as a problem, perhaps we would get to the point where we would suggest that the one who has more should be more restrained in enjoying that wealth, or even that that person or that community should share. And who would be willing to do that? Okay, so those are my quick points. I'm sorry I rushed through this, but I'll come back after the exam here. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Elisio. Thank you very much for that provocation. I'm glad that you started this talk, and I'm looking forward to seeing you shortly.